thunder and lightning, past the clouds, over the dark night. She reached up to the sky of stars and caught the red-hot light of the North Star.
Good morning. You know, we're 1 week away from Trump 47, Trump Redux. The world is changing faster than ever. Possible wars with Iran, with Russia, and China loom on the horizon. Austerity measures threaten a continued squeeze of the middle class as political chaos brews on the home front. There's crazy talk, bellicosity from a crazy man of reclaiming the Panama Canal, annexing Greenland and Canada, and even renaming the Gulf of Mexico. Folks, this isn't just speculation. It's part of a high-stakes reality that could impact us all. What does this mean? This bellicose, jingoistic language, what does it mean for America's future, the global balance of power, and for people like you? Let's connect some dots and find out.
Connecting the Dots with Dr. Wilmer Leon, where the analysis of politics, culture, and history converge.
Good morning and welcome to the Connecting the Dots podcast with Dr. Wilmer Leon, and I am Wilmer Leon. Here's the point. We have a tendency to view current events as though they happen in a vacuum, failing to understand the broader historical context in which most events occur. During each episode, my guests and I have probing, provocative, and in-depth discussions that connect the dots between these events and the broader historic context in which they take place, thus enabling you to better understand and analyze these events that are impacting the global village in which we live. On today's episode, the issue before us is crazy talk from a crazy man. He wants to reclaim the Panama Canal using military force if necessary. He wants to annex Greenland. Trump has failed to rule out military action, and Denmark, who controls Greenland, is also a NATO ally. And he also is talking about annexing Canada and even renaming the Gulf of Mexico. What? That laughter, my guest is, and it would be funny if it weren't serious. My guest is an independent journalist whose work can be found at Substack and thepolemicist.net. He is Dr. Jim Kavanagh. Jim, welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me, Wilmer.
Okay, there's a bit of housekeeping I want to get to, if you don't mind.
Okay.
The BBC reported 2 days ago that 2 North Korean soldiers have been captured as prisoners of war by Ukrainian troops in Russia's Kursk Oblast. And this is according to the consummate purveyor of truth, Volodymyr Zelensky. Now, folks, they exposed and the reason I'm bringing this up, Jim, is because I had KJ No on last Friday, and he exposed this story as a lie. And then I've also, as you know, talk a lot with Sloboda, and Sloboda said these stories are lies. But now people are sending me these BBC stories saying, Wilmer, the BBC says that there are North Koreans. So folks, they exposed their own lie in their own story. Quote, Zelensky also posted 4 photographs alongside his statement to show wounded men. One of the photos showed a red Russian military card. The place of birth on the document is given as Tehran in the Tuva Republic, which, folks, is on the border of Mongolia. So let's apply Occam's razor to this story. Of two competing theories, the simpler explanation of an entity is to be preferred. So, since the man's ID card says he's from the Tuva Republic, and the Tuva Republic is part of Russia on the Mongolian border, then why don't we just assume that the man is from Tuva? Here's what Mark Sloboda had to say about this. Quote, "Of course they are from Tuva. They don't even look remotely like North Koreans. They look exactly like Tuvans look. Western racist bullshit that pretends all Asiatics look the same. And I'm 100% sure you'll never hear a spoken statement from them in Korean, which is why it's all written confessions beat out of them by the SBU. I have not seen one genuine point of evidence that there are any North Korean troops fighting in the SMO, which makes no military sense anyway. The intelligence service said the prisoners do not speak English, Ukrainian, or Russian. Quote, so communication with them is carried out through interpreters of Korean in cooperation with the North Korean National Intelligence Service. Jim, 2 points. One, both KJ and Sloboda have said one of the reasons why you won't have North Korean troops fighting in Russia is because they don't speak the same language. Now, the story says they don't speak Russian.
I know.
And what was the other point I wanted to make? I can't remember what the other. Anyway, your thoughts, Jim Kavanagh.
You know, it is classic. All those slanty-eyed Asians look the same. What can I say? It's Russia's a big country. There are Asian Russians. I mean, Mongolia and the Far East, they're Asian ethnic groups, so they kind of have an Asiatic look. So we can call them Koreans because they all look the same. It's really, again, it would be laughable if it weren't serious. This whole North Korean thing, and they did kind of drop it for a while. That was the excuse for allowing the Ukrainians to use long-range missiles against Russia. But, because the Ukrainians have brought North Koreans in, so now we're going to let them use long-range missiles against Russia. And all of the terrible beating and casualties that the Russians are taking. You'd think they'd have scores of North Korean bodies at this point that could be easily identifiable. And as you say, and as people have said, Alexander McCurris has gone over this 100 times. Why would the Russians bring North Korean troops into this battle when they can't even speak Russian? It would just complicate things for them. And the Russians have plenty of troops. And so this is just silliness. But the serious part of it is Zelensky is afraid of Trump, I think, and wants to, there's more than a likelihood that he's going to become more and more provocative and maybe try and get something ridiculously provocative happening before the 20th, actually, within the next week. And that's what we have to be aware of here and be wary of, that Zelensky is desperate and he's afraid that Trump is going to pull out. I don't think that's necessarily the case at all, but Zelensky does, and the Europeans do. So Zelensky might look for a false flag, look for some kind of event involving a nuclear weapon, dirty bomb, or attack on a nuclear weapon, a nuclear power station, before the 20th. That I wouldn't be surprised at all.
There's one more. I now remember what my other point was. KJ made this point, and I did not know this. KJ said, the truth is wedded in the lie. And I asked him to clarify that. And what he said was, it's not Russia sending North Korean troops in. It's the United States sending South Korean troops in. And now you're a greater mind and historian than I. He said that's what the United States does ever since the end of World War II. When it's about to mop up or end a conflict, they use South Korean troops to do so. He said that, and I didn't know this, he said the United States sent South Koreans into Vietnam early in 1970 as we were getting out of Vietnam. And he gave a couple of other, he talked about Afghanistan. He said the United States sent South Korean troops into Afghanistan as the United States was leaving Afghanistan. He said, this is what the United States does. He says, so yes, there are Koreans in the theater and they ain't watching the movie. They're playing in the play. He said, but it's the U.S. practice to use South, and I haven't had a chance to look this up, but if KJ No says it, I tend to give it credibility.
Yeah, that has historical credibility. Whether it's actually happening here or not, I don't know. But that's a very interesting take. And it jibes with what's going on in South Korea, with the Americans trying to put this guy in to have a coup in South Korea. And that was, when that was discussed in the news now, it was even one of the reasons the Americans wanted this guy was to give arms, at least send more arms to Ukraine and to get more cooperation from South Korea about Ukraine. So that's entirely plausible. And it's interesting to look at that in relationship to what's been happening in South Korea and the attempt to essentially for a military coup in South Korea.
I say this in all seriousness, and I'm not saying this to toot my own horn, even though I'm going to toot my own horn. What we just had, I think, was an incredibly intelligent, fact-based conversation about a very serious issue. Why isn't Morning Joe? Why aren't you on Morning Joe talking about this? Why aren't you on CNN talking about this? That's kind
I demand too much money.
Oh, well, yeah. Oh, by the way,
pay my fee. No.
By the way, Jim, your check is in the mail.
But this is exactly right. People, Mark Sloboda, KJ No. I mean, there are people all over every day talking on Alexander Makuris, you, Garland. There are people all over the internet on independent media for nothing,
right?
Talking about things and having good conversations in which people can learn things and they can disagree with each other and they have. But it's just, you don't see any of this. It's just a barrage of nonsense and delusion. I said this to a friend of mine, very nice woman, and then very good friend of mine, and my wife's, and Democratic Party person, but very now becoming more radical. And I said, look, now everybody knows that for 4 years, just one thing, but it's a kind of an important thing. Joe Biden wasn't there for 4 years. The Wall Street Journal is now talking about it. For 4 years, they knew, and they knew. All of them knew. The Congress people knew. The media people knew. They all knew, and they lied. I knew. We were saying it. I was writing it in 2020. This guy.
I said he would not be the Democrats' nominee in 2024.
Yep.
I said that 2 years ago.
I know. So, but the point is, what I'm saying to her is, you're a Democrat. Who was being fooled by this? They were lying. That wasn't a mistake.
Right.
They all knew it was not true, and they were lying to you about it for 4 years.
And they still. Simone Sanders, God bless her, was on Meet the Press, not yesterday, but the Sunday before, and she was aghast of, how could you say that Joe Biden is not compos mentis? I mean, it was
but they are admitting it now. There is a Wall Street Journal article which says, nobody could meet with them. He couldn't have meetings with the congressional. So they're admitting it now. But what I'm saying to this woman is, if I were a Democrat, I'd be pissed. I'm the one. You're the person. The people in the Democratic Party. You're the ones who were being played for 4 years. Republicans didn't believe it. I didn't. Radical leftists like me didn't believe it. But they were lying to you. And unless the people, and that's kind of an important thing, and they played you. And unless you start saying to yourself, how is it that I was able to be played that way? What was my role in that? And that's just one thing, but it's a kind of important thing. That's obviously now not true. And it's kind of obvious that they knew it was not true, but there's millions of people who put their faith in politicians and media who were lying to them. And they were the ones who were played. The Democratic constituency is the mark, are the ones who are being fooled and played by either the people who have been played and fooled and were the mark say, wait a minute, how'd that happen? How am I going to prevent that from happening again? Or they're going to get played again and again and again.
You were angry. You were pissed, as the late great Robin Harris would say, pissed to the highest of pistivity. That's how pissed I am. And the other thing is, when you and I and others, you mentioned others, Alexander and others, Garland, when we provide the counter narrative and okay, so I hadn't planned to go on this, but this is I think a perfect point for you to respond. So Zuckerberg comes on last week and makes the proclamation that Facebook is no longer going to fact check. Now, for me, the problem with that statement is the premise of the statement is a lie, because they weren't fact checking. What they were doing was sheep herding and protecting the dominant administration narrative. When people like Jim Kavanagh would post things on Facebook that were true and fact-based, when Wilmer Leon comes on and talks about genocide in Gaza, I get deplatformed. Jim Kavanagh gets deplatformed, telling the truth. So Zuckerberg, you come on, and then now everybody is he must be in the pocket of Donald Trump because he says he's no longer going to fact check. He wasn't fact checking to begin with.
Yep.
Jim,
and what he said, you have to listen to it. He said they came at us hard. They cursed, they screamed, they yelled, and if we didn't do it, we said they started investigations. So this was clearly the government trying to use Facebook as an arm of censorship, and that's what it was. And he allowed it to happen. Whatever he's saying now, I said that I think on the Critical Hour way back when they brought Zuckerberg before the Congress. They started going after him. I said, if I were Mark Zuckerberg, I'd say, well, I'm glad to hear your opinions on this, but it has nothing to do with what I'm going to do in Facebook. I'm not going to censor people because you want me to. But he bent the knee to them, and because they have the power to do all kinds of investigations and antitrust stuff, and they're going to come after him. So this is what he had to be, the one to stand up to this in the beginning. And if people if he had, and if Jack Dorsey had at Twitter at that time, stood up and said, we're not going to do this crap. But instead they went along with it. They had their daily or weekly meetings with the FBI and whatever, censorship complex agency they were dealing with every week to try and get orders and to see what they could be allowed to put on as opposed to censor. But they did that. So they went along with it. That's what it was.
And the greatest defense for them to this, to your point, would have been to come out and say to the American people,
yep,
I just got a call from Joe Biden. Or I just got a call from Kamala Harris, or I just got whoever it was in the administration that sent them a letter or made a phone call or brought them into a meeting and was demanding they should have come and exposed it. Look, a couple months ago, right after Thanksgiving, I got a call from the FBI. The FBI wanted me to come and talk to them. I came on the air and said, hey, folks, I just got a call from the FBI.
Yeah.
And this is what they want me to do. Okay, let's move on to the next. Let's move on to the next story. And folks, this is all. Jim and I hadn't planned to talk about this stuff, but all of this came up in the last minutes before we came on air. So, okay. So where am I now? Oh, so before we get to the crazy talk from the crazy king of Crazyland, there's another story that I think is quite telling. The Guardian is reporting Steve Bannon condemns Elon Musk as racist and truly evil. In an escalation of discontent among the highest profile far-right followers of Donald Trump, his former advisor, Steve Bannon, has called Trump's newest favorite, Elon Musk, racist and a truly evil guy, pledging to take this guy down and kick him out of the Maga movement. Well, first of all, Jim, this sounds like a bunch of guys fighting over a woman or a bunch of women fighting over a guy. But anyway, is this palace intrigue a tu brute? Your thoughts, Jim Kavanagh?
Well, I was glad to see that there's this split happening in the MAGA movement between the populist MAGA movement and the billionaire MAGA movement. And, this is one of the worst and most pernicious things of American politics, this billionaire populism. Christopher Hitchens had a good phrase about it in his better days. But this is what it is. These billionaires come along and they have a style that's more, down to earth, and they say things forthrightly because they don't give a damn anyway, and nobody's going to bother them. So they have an appeal to people, in opposition to those people who they see are constantly crafting their discourse in a way that's meant to not step on anybody's toes. So that gives them a populist appeal. But in the meantime, they're filling up. Donald Trump's filling up his administration with billionaires. He's a billionaire. He's not a populist. He's a member of the ruling class. He's part of the club. And so now that's come to light with this issue of the H-1B visas. And that's a very good issue. And I've always said about immigration, yes, there are serious problems with immigration, not just on the southern border.
Correct.
There are all the Indian and Israeli and Irish coming in, and they overstay their visas. And they, so you're going to talk about immigration.
They're called Irish au pairs.
Yeah.
And you find a lot of them on the East Coast.
Yeah, I know. And Elon Musk himself, he worked illegally under a student visa. Well, he was his wife and Donald Trump's wife. So let's talk about immigration all across the board. And the H-1B visa thing is a real thing. And it's good that it's come out. There's been great threads on Twitter about it, a lot of stuff about it. They have, these brokers, these companies that are essentially labor brokers. They go to India and they fill out 10, 20 applications for each candidate who pays them until they get someone in. Maybe the person doesn't even know what they're doing, and they'll come in and they'll put an apartment with 10 people, and those people will pay money to the broker and send the work remotely to India to do the work. And that's all about getting cheaper technical labor, not hiring American software engineers. There's no question that's what that's about. So it's good that they're finding that out. And Bannon, and it is interesting because Trump, having someone like Elon Musk as your sidekick, and as someone who's prosing programs, he and another billionaire, Ramaswamy, who made his money on fake drugs, having them as your sidekick and defining the character of the administration is very different than Steve Bannon. Because whatever you think about Steve Bannon, he's smart. He has a populist streak, and I love seeing him go after he really going after Musk. And he's saying, when they're white Musk and Peter Thiel, who's of course Vance's godfather, and these are white South Africans. These jobs they're given, no Black Americans or Hispanic Americans are getting this job. So it's very good. And Bannon is another character. Bannon is the one who set the populist tone for Trump in 2016 that helped him win. And Trump listened to the wrong people again and pushed him out. The failure of Biden made it easier for Trump this time. But one of the interesting that Bannon said in this thing, what he says is essentially Musk isn't interested in anything. He'll do anything to make sure that one of his companies is protected and he has a better deal and makes more money. That's what he's interested in. And then he said his aggregation of wealth, and then through wealth, power, that's what he's focused on. And that's correct. And Steve Bannon, I would say, that's the problem with capitalism. Elon Musk is listened to and has power because he has $400 billion, not because he's smart. He knows nothing about economics. We'll go into that maybe later. But he's saying all kinds of nonsense, and he's going to help destroy the federal government and federal programs. He's going to go after that on basis of ignorance. He's listened to, and he gets into the seat of power because he has wealth. And that's the problem with capitalism. And that's what taxes are for. Taxes are for stopping inequality and not allowing people to be that wealthy, because that's too much power. And he
bought his way in to Donald Trump's ear. And that's what
Bannon says. Yeah.
And that's one of the things that pisses Bannon off.
Yeah.
Is that that Elon Musk was able to write the check and get the seat at the table. He says, he says, he's truly an evil guy, a very bad guy. I made it my personal thing to take this guy down. Before, because he put money in, I was prepared to tolerate it. I'm not prepared to tolerate it anymore. I will have Elon Musk run out of here by Inauguration Day. You got 1 week.
Yeah.
Steve Bannon. He will not have full access to the White House. He will be like any other person. You made this point, Jim, and I was going to make the point in another way. I find this fight amusing because a lot of the tropes around the immigration discussion center around people of color complaining about Mexican immigrants coming into this country and taking the jobs of people of color, even though that's not true. Now what we have primarily are white folks fighting over immigrants coming in and taking the jobs and depressing the salary of white folks. That I find to be very ironic and amusing.
No, I would say, look, I wouldn't say it's not true that that Mexican labor doesn't take the job of people of color, and Haitian labor takes the job of American people of color. So these are not unreal things. They have to be looked at honestly and straightforwardly. And there's been, for the past 4 or 5 years, 3 years at least, incredible insanity at the border and letting people in, and nobody wants to take that seriously. So I think that the left has to take these issues seriously, and they're not just to be dismissed. But it's a question of looking with good faith at the whole issue of immigration and how you want to control how many people get in, et cetera, and do it honestly and do it consistently. I think that's not been done and should be done. But I'm glad to see Bannon saying exactly right. Elon Musk is in because he can write the check. But this, everybody has to realize, this is the problem of capitalism. And this is what we have, an oligarchy with unlimited bribery. That's what Jimmy Carter said. Everybody wants to go to his funeral now. And when he's dead, Obama wouldn't let him speak at the Democratic convention because he denounced Israeli apartheid. He identified Israeli apartheid. They wouldn't let him speak. But now we go to his funeral and say what a great ex-president he was, or president he was, what a nice guy he was, et cetera, which he was a nice guy, as you've seen my last thing. I knew him personally. But but the point is, that was correct. It's an oligarchy with unlimited bribery. And this is the problem. If you allow people wealth to get 100,000 times more wealth than they're going to use that to get political power and change the social economy and the policies of the society in a way that benefits them and hurts ordinary people.
I'm going to connect 2 dots here. One, what you just explained about Elon Musk is the downside of the Citizens United decision. This, I believe, is a clear example of why you need to have limitations on the amount of money that corporations and individuals can contribute to political campaigns, so that people like Elon Musk can't come in, write a check, and get the ear of the president. Let me connect another dot, totally unrelated, but just to show you how these things take time. We're looking at these fires in Los Angeles, and a lot of people now want to scapegoat LA Mayor Karen Bass for cutting the budget of the LA Fire Department. Well, folks, first of all, what's going on in Los Angeles is what's called in legal parlance an act of God. 90-mile-an-hour winds, Santa Ana winds, pushing these flames and pushing these embers all over Southern California. That's an act of God. I don't care how many fire hydrants you have, how many firefighters you have. I don't care how much water you have. This one, you weren't going to deal with. Now, so Karen Bass, and I'm no Karen Bass fan. She used to sit on the board of directors of the National Endowment for Democracy, CIA, regime change corporation. So I'm no fan of Karen Bass, but the truth is the truth. And it's my job to tell you the truth. So when they tell you this, I'm sorry for all this long dissertation, but the point here is this. When they tell you that Karen Bass cut the fire department budget, why did she have to? Well, we got to go all the way back to the Reagan administration and look at the Reagan administration cutting federal grants and block grant programs, giving your tax dollars, your federal tax dollars, back to the states to offset state budgets. As that money dried up so that Ronald Reagan could spend more money scaring the Soviet Union defensively and underwriting the military-industrial complex, your tax dollars, instead of going to the Los Angeles Fire Department, are being paid to pay for salaries and retirements in Ukraine. That's where this conversation should be. Not scapegoating Karen Bass, but understanding what's happened to your tax dollars and why you now have to pay higher fees for kids to play sports in high school, why you have to pay higher fees for your kids if they have music programs in high school, why they have to pay more for that. Why do you have to pay Easy Pass, a private corporation, to pay tolls to traverse public thoroughfares? Because Ronald Reagan sent that money overseas. Sorry for the rant, but I thought I needed to connect those dots. Jim Kavanagh.
Yeah, look, absolutely. What's happening in Los Angeles is a huge natural disaster, right? That whatever the causes of it are, we have to have an honest discussion about that. And they are scapegoating Karen Bass. She probably has some things that she could be criticized for. A
lot of things.
Very, very, very honestly. And she should be criticized. But I've seen contradictory things about whether she actually did cut or deferred. But what you're saying is true. This is a question.
It was the LA City Council that actually did.
Yeah. But this is exactly what Elon Musk wants. He wants to cut. You want to cut the government. You want to cut government spending. Well, guess what happens when you have this tremendous program and push to cut government spending? You cut government spending. So that's what the thing she did. Now, it's also a more complicated thing in the United States because, as you're alluding to here, you have different sources of spending and of money. You have the federal government source, and I'm going to say this now, and this is an important thing. It's not tax dollars. Federal government spending, there's no such thing as taxpayer money at the federal government level. In fact, federal government spending does not come from taxes. It's not funded by taxes. At the local level, at the state level, it is. So what you're alluding to here is that if you withdraw the federal money coming in, then the state and the localities have to raise taxes, have to get money from taxes, okay? And that becomes a more and more difficult thing to do. That's where they raise the property taxes. But there are all kinds of things that are going on here that are very nasty. The insurance scam,
Right.
the insurance companies, and the question of where you build and real estate and, overdevelopment in certain areas, all of these things have to be honestly looked at. But what you immediately get when something happens in the United States from both sides, from the Democratic and Republican side, oh, you see, if you had gun control, or if you only had climate change, or if you only did this, or the Democrat, this is Newsom's fault, or Karen Bassett's fault. And the event becomes a tool and a weapon to use in these silly partisan wars and culture wars and whatever you want to call it. And we get nowhere with that. Except into more and more culture wars.
And to your point about insurance scams, and just to validate that point, this is from the LA Times. First, they lost their home insurance. Then LA fires consumed their homes. Last year, Francis Bichetti said he learned that the annual cost of the homeowner's policy he buys from Farmers Insurance for his Pacific Palisades home was going to soar from $4,500 to $18,000, an amount he could not afford. Neither could he get into the California FAIR plan, which provides fewer benefits, because he said he would have had to cut down 10 trees around his roof line to lower the fire risk. He decided he would do what's called going bare, not buying coverage on his home in the El Medino neighborhood. So, folks, again, getting back to the discussion of the distraction, you can blame Karen Bass all you want. The question for me going forward is, what's the government going to do to make all these people that have been burned out of their homes whole? That's why you need government. That's the social safety net. I'm trying to remember the term the social network theory, where we all come together as human beings. This is Hobbes and Locke, Thomas Hobbes and John Locke, talking about the social contract theory, where we all come together and we abdicate some of our rights as individuals so that we can peacefully coexist as a society. And we are greatly losing that. Now, Jim, 37 minutes in, we can talk about what we sat down to talk about. Which is, so
the Greenland,
the king. Well, before we get there, the king of crazy land. Trump says he will change the name of the Gulf of Mexico. He would move to try to rename the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America. A name, he said, it has a beautiful ring to it. Jim, this is the same guy who vowed to build a wall along the Mexican border and make Mexico pay for it. My point in bringing this up, because it is a huge distraction, but the bellicose, jingoistic nature of this language, to me, is more dangerous than the concept itself.
Well, yeah, jingoism is exactly the right word. And what's dangerous about
said
it,
by a man with PhD in English, so thank you.
Yeah. What's dangerous about it, as I think you're suggesting, is that it legitimizes this attitude of jingoism. I mean, this is now something that we are to be. Suddenly the sun came out. This is now something that
Jim Kavanaugh's talking. When Jim the sun comes out.
This is now something that we're going to, now we can talk about this. There was a great, I remember that Randy Newman had one of the great albums, and he has a song called Political Science. And this is really that song again. No one likes this. I don't know why. Heaven knows we tried. Let's drop the big one and get it over with. So it's really this silly attitude towards, and we're the big dogs, and we're going to be the big dogs, and Elon Musk, we're going to coup whoever we want and get over it, deal with it. And this is the way that Trump is now talking. He's adopted the Bolton line and the Bolton attitude, John Bolton attitude. And it's the attitude that it's a very bad idea for a lot of Americans to get to succumb to that again. It's a very bad idea because it's wrong, and it's ethically wrong, and it's stupid, but it's also a very bad idea because we don't have the strength to do these things. People aren't going to lay down for this crap anymore. I mean, yeah, we can do whatever we want to Greenland and Denmark. We can't do whatever we want to Mexico. Not quite. That would be a hell of a fight. We could, and what are you going to do? I mean, one of the things I think that Trump made in the best version of this, the best interpretation of this is, this is a way for Trump coming in with the new administration, knowing he's going to lose Ukraine, to pump up the American power elsewhere, to say, we're still the big dogs. Look, we can take Greenland. We might lose Ukraine, but we can take Greenland and rename the Gulf of Mexico and take back the Panama Canal. But, so it's not that he'd necessarily do any of that, but that it's a compensation, and a rhetorical compensation and a political compensation for what he may be losing in Ukraine. I don't think he's going to. So in the best interpretation, he's laying the groundwork for letting go of Ukraine. I don't think that's true, but that's what a lot of people think. And I'll say this, and I said it in my the last video I did.
Mm-hmm.
One of the sleeper things I think that we have to be very wary of coming into the new year is not just Iran and Russia, not just Iran and Ukraine and China, which they're going to put off for a while because they know they can't screw around with that too much, but Venezuela and Cuba, especially with Marco Rubio in there, they might be saying these are bits that we can swallow. We can certainly take Denmark isn't gonna, but if we can go for Denmark, we can go for Venezuela, we can go for Cuba because Cuba's in a bad state. And so and with Rubio as Secretary of State, and they're still saying they don't recognize a Maduro in Venezuela. So this is the kind of attitude, and they're calling it the new Monroe Doctrine. Right. So this is the old Monroe Doctrine, and it's just plain old American. It's 19th century American imperialism, and that's what they're going back to. So but again, the thing with Trump is wait a day and see what he says tomorrow. And that's part of the problem. That's why they don't like Trump. This is one of the reasons they don't like Trump, because he says things like this. We don't need to do anything we have the Air Force, the Tool Air Force Base in Greenland. We own Greenland militarily. They act as it's a base of the United States. So this is all, maybe there are rare earth metals he can get, but he can make a deal with Greenland. Now, in fact, the thing with Greenland is smart because there's a indigenous Greenland people that want to be more independent from Denmark, and he's going to play on that, and he might be able to get something out of that. But do the American people really want to take over Greenland? I mean, this is it's nonsense, but it's got some kind of a potential political benefit to him. And I would, as you say, be very careful of the attitude towards being 19th century Monroe Doctrine imperialist, because where that's most dangerously going to come to fruition, I think, is in place like Venezuela and Cuba.
And Carol Asbram, thank you for that super sticker. And Carol makes the point, talk about why there was not enough water in the fire hydrants. The California almond and nut growers, the Resnicks, own over 40% of the water in California. Let's be sure we don't mix causation and correlation, because the problem with the hydrants in California had less to do with water and more to do with water pressure. So if you go to your house and open up your back faucet, go in your yard, in your front yard, open up your front faucet, open up the faucets in your kitchen and your bathrooms and start flushing your toilets, you will start to see water pressure in your home drop. I'm not saying that there weren't problems with water in some hydrants. What I'm saying is don't conflate that and construe the issue with pressure versus access to water.
That's a great point. You know, this is the way to talk about things. You're being precise. You're looking at the real situation in a scientific way, in the most general sense of the term. And I think that's generally true. That probably it wasn't, but there are questions of water. And what I forget the woman's name just said is very important. The Resnicks own like 40% of the water in California. Water politics in California is the great movie Chinatown. It's all about the water politics in California and in Los Angeles versus the Valley and versus the agricultural areas. And the fact that the
Imperial Valley in California.
Yeah, and the San Joaquin Valley.
Right.
And the Resnicks, who own, the wonderful pistachio company, have taken control of a lot of water in California. They do a very nasty job there. So people should look into that. That's an ongoing, underlying part of the problematic of water and water politics in California that she's pointed to, and I'm very glad she did. The extent to which that's specifically, certainly, whether it's the problem with the hydrants in the Palisades area, which is an elevated area too, the problem with water pressure, or other areas where the fires are, which are just incredible now. I have two nephews who live in the Hollywood Hills. They were evacuated. So that you have to be careful in assigning causality to something. But the fact that this event is putting people in a position of saying, we got to look at what's happening with the water politics of California and the Resnicks and Pistachio King, et cetera.
In fact, when I was in law school in California, I was told by a very dear family friend, attorney Nathaniel Colley. He asked me what I was going to focus on, and I was going to be a sports agent. I was going to study sports law, and he said, "No, you need to focus on water law." And if I had listened to Mr. Colley 40 years ago, well, I wouldn't be here talking to you, but I would be rich living in California. Okay. So Carol, so thank you for that super sticker. And again, folks, we have to be very, very careful that we don't conflate causality and correlation and causality. Correlation and anyway, what did I say? I forgot.
That's right.
Thank you. So with that, because again, that's another distraction. That's another distraction trying to blame Karen Bass, folks. This is a natural disaster. Fire is that's Mother Nature handling business. 90 mile an hour winds. You can't. Okay, I made that point. Let's move on. So Trump of Mexico, got it. Oh, final point on the Gulf of Mexico thing, and this is from Newsweek. Chuck Schumer said that we'll work with Trump to rename the Gulf of Mexico on one condition. Quote, Donald Trump throws out a lot of strange and rather random ideas on a regular basis. He did it yesterday when suggesting that we rename the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America. And Schumer said this jokingly, or chuckling at least while he said it. He says, well, let me say this. I'd agree to working with Donald Trump on renaming the Gulf of Mexico only if he first agrees to work with us on an actual plan on lowering costs for Americans. That's what the American people want us to focus on first, not on renaming bodies of water. Jim, I get Schumer's idea, but to me, with things as ridiculous as this, he needed to come out and say, folks, this isn't funny. There's no humor here.
Yeah.
Things are too serious and too perilous for us to be joking about this. This is crazy talk from the crazy leader of crazy town, and we are not going to even entertain foolishness of this nature.
Yeah.
I trying to be sarcastic about this is not the time nor the place, in my opinion.
Look, as you say, we're facing very serious decisions about very serious things. and including cutting costs. I don't know what Chuck Schumer's going to do about that, but let's talk about serious things and let's not play these games. And the problem with Trump here in saying this is he's not the Greenland thing. Apparently he's been doing this for years. I didn't even realize it, but he's not.
I think 2019 is when he first started talking about this.
Yeah, he's not unserious about that. And it demonstrates something about Trump. And again, it's something that the managers of the imperial system don't like, and that we don't like, which is that he's capable of saying and doing anything. If he could rename the Gulf of Mexico, he would. Mm-hmm. I mean, he can't. He can't, but he'll say he can, and he'll talk about it. But he maybe can do something with Greenland that'll screw a lot of things up between the United States and Denmark, et cetera, and they don't want him talking like this, because this is not the way a president, for bad and good ways, it's not the way a president should talk. A president should be serious. He's the president of the United States. He's not a clown. He's not on a reality show anymore. And so he doesn't get that. He really doesn't get that. So that is something about him that you're highlighting here, that he's crazy talk from a crazy man. But and he'll probably be talked down from the craziest of his positions, but maybe not. You never know. And this is why this is a symptom and a sign of the poverty of our political culture, really, that we have these choices between non-compos mentis president and a clown, a reality show host.
And Ramplesense says, Dr. Leon, I don't believe the fires were a cause of nature. There are videos of people starting the fires, and they caught 5 of them. Okay, fine. That has nothing to do with Karen Bass. My point, okay, Ramplesense, if you're absolutely right, if they weren't started, and another point, California has been in a state of drought for almost 20 years. There was a time in California. I'm from Sacramento, so I know a little bit about this. There was a time in California when there was what was called fire season. And it usually ran during the summer and maybe to October. It was called fire season. But we never, back when I was a kid, you weren't hearing about fires in Los Angeles in January. No. So there's a climate change, there's a global warming aspect to this. The fact that California's been in a drought for damn near 20 years contributes to this. So, okay, for the sake of this conversation, I'll give you those 5 folks with a box of matches setting fires in California. Okay, but look at where it's gone. Look at how it is conflagrated. And I think that's the exact word to use for fire. Right, Jim? Conflagrated. And it has nothing to do with Karen Bass cutting. So don't miss the bigger point, people. I believe it was an act of God. You got 5 folks on video with a box of matches setting fire. Okay, that's not the point. That's the point. That's not the point. Okay, so and so you've got, going back now to the Gulf of Mexico, Marjorie Taylor Greene has come out and said she will write legislation authorizing Congress to pay to change the maps. So to me, this is why Chuck Schumer is off base with his sarcasm, because I believe Schumer is, with those sarcastic remarks, is talking to Trump when he should be talking to the American people. If he were talking to the American people, he would say, look, y'all voted for this idiot. We told you he was an idiot. He showed you he was an idiot. And now he's talking like an idiot. This is what you get when you're around with people like this. Mm-hmm. That, to me, is what Chuck Schumer should be saying to the American people. Donald Trump be damned.
Well, yeah, look, Who is it? What is there some international authority that names these things? It has
yes, there is.
Yeah,
and I'll
so,
tell
go ahead.
there is. It's called the hydro it's called the Hydrogeographic Society.
Right. There's an internationally recognized authority to name these.
Hydro. Hey, Wilmer, you're smarter than you thought. The International Hydrographic Organization.
Okay.
Is what is responsible for naming and charting uniformly oceans, seas, and navigable waters.
Okay. Arose by any other name. So look, they're not going to change that, and it's not going to be for what reason, again, except as a distraction, would this become a priority of the Trump administration or the United States Congress? It is, again, it's WWF, it's World Wrestling Federation put into politics. We have to get away from this kind of politics. You're going to rename the Gulf of Mexico? What does it have to do with anything? I mean, we have to. What are you going to do about the war in Iran? What are you going to do about the war in Ukraine? What are you going to do about the fact of Americans can't afford housing? And the issue. What I want to say is a little bit more about this. What's happening not just in California, but in North Carolina. I mean, look what's happened here. So that does raise issues, which are very important issues about how development takes place, and building in floodplains. How much development do you do in areas of dry when you have 20-year droughts and you have you have dry weather? But that's all of those real social issues get disappeared by the fact that people want to build housing developments and make a lot of money. And what do you do with houses that are worth $20 or $30 million? How can you if insurance companies private insurance companies don't want to insure them, the public going to take the insurance for a $20 million house? So these are real issues that have to do with recognizing that the economy is a social fact, and we have to get together as a society and as a group of people cooperatively and make decisions about what we're going to insure, what we're not going to insure, how much we can build in certain areas and not build in certain areas, what kind of land management we have to do, etc. And instead of that, let's have a playing field where Resnick can make billions of dollars by taking all the water, and some real estate developer over here can make $1 billion by building houses in Pacific Palisades, and blah 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 blah. So this points to the need for another kind of notion of managing the economy and economic development.
I hate to be petty, but you're questioning my intellect here. Chanel, no. Chanel says, I grew up in LA. We had no fire season. Well, then why did Governor Newsom say there is no longer a fire season in California? Why did the Alabama Reflector have an article, why California's wildfire season keeps getting longer and more devastating? Even in France, California's wildfire season may now be year-round. AP, it's not really the typical time for nasty California fires, hence season. Why did that change? Okay, so just want to let y'all know, when I was a kid, there was a fire season in California. Again, come on now, y'all. So you go from renaming the Gulf of Mexico, which, by the way, I think, Jim, it's been called the Gulf of Mexico for over 400 years. It's the Gulf of Mexico, damn it. Let's move on. Trump wants to reclaim the Panama Canal. Why pick a battle over this?
Again, yeah.
Trump's threats open wounds of the 1989 U.S. invasion. And here's one of the things, Jim, that Trump is trying to use this conversation for. He's blaming China. Trump is saying that China and Chinese companies either own or heavily influence the operation of the Panama Canal. And folks, what you need to understand is that in 1977, President Jimmy Carter signed a treaty. It's not an agreement. It's not like the JCPOA. He signed a treaty, which means it was approved by Congress, giving control of the Panama Canal to Panama under the condition that it would be free for any nation to use. But Trump now is alleging that the canal is no longer under the control of Panama. He says it's being operated by China. So, Jim, this is an example of how he's using one lie to bolster a foreign policy, a militaristic foreign policy. It's basically he's shifting the debate from Taiwan to Panama.
Yeah. I mean, they are after China. Ultimately, they're going to portray China, and they haven't portrayed China as the ultimate villain and as our enemy for some reason. They want to make an enemy of China. Again, how stupid can you be? China doesn't really want to be our enemy. What Trump is complaining about is that Chinese ships use the Panama Canal because they do. They use the Panama Canal. They don't control the Panama Canal. And what he wants to do is to prevent Chinese ships from using the Panama Canal. What he wants to do is to take control of the situation where he can sanction China from the canal if they want to do that. So that's really what if there is a goal, that's the goal. But as you say, I mean, why pick this fight now? If I thought there was a rationale to, some people think the rationale is, oh, we're picking the fight now to show we can pick a fight when we're going to lose a fight, which is the fight in Ukraine. I don't think it has that much sense of rationality to it even at all. I think he's just bloviating. He's saying things that he thinks are important, that he likes to talk about, because they make him sound like the big dog. He's the big dog. He's going to intimidate everybody. He's going to take back the canal from Panama. No, he's not. He's really not. I mean, and if he does, it's going to be a hell of a fight. And on what basis? As you say, this is a treaty that was ratified by the United States Senate. We're going to just go in and attack Panama and take the canal? Okay. I mean, that's going to be great for the United States. And for what are you going to get from it? What immediate advantage are you going to get from it? Your ships can go through the canal now. You're just going to get a bunch of hate from the rest of the world, and you can have a fight, and people are going to die for no reason. And you won't ultimately be able to hold on to it. So it's really something that, again, this is one of the things that this is Donald Trump at his Trumpiest, and doing and saying things that the only people who like to hear this are Trump fans. The ruling class doesn't really like to hear this, and they don't need this nonsense. They want some kind of solution that's real and going to be more advantageous to the United States. But it's Trump fans, and it's laying down. It's ginning up the jingoism in the American public insofar as it works. I don't think it's going to work very much, because I don't think anybody really wants to go to war with Panama.
Let me throw one element into this conversation. You asked, why do this? Because there has been for a number of years a conversation not about the Panama Canal, but the Nicaraguan Canal, which would connect the Caribbean Sea through Nicaragua, a la the Atlantic Ocean, with the Pacific Ocean. And China, from what I understand, China has been in conversations for a number of years with Nicaragua to build a canal through Nicaragua, the Caribbean Sea, to the Pacific Ocean. And I'm wondering if laying back in the weeds, I think we could also throw the U.S. escalation of involvement in Haiti into this as well, as being one of those elements in the background that folks are looking at, saying we don't want China to have this cooperative agreement with Nicaragua and build the Nicaragua Canal project.
Yeah, look, end of day, what they want is the United States to control every important element of the world, militarily and economically.
Full spectrum dominance, I think, is what it's called.
Exactly. That was militarily, but it's also economically. And this is an important choke point in the world and in world trade and world commerce is the canal connecting the Pacific and Atlantic Oceans, and they don't want the Chinese to build one, and they think they can still bully everybody and take control of everything. And Donald Trump thinks he can do that. He thinks the United States is capable of asserting its will wherever it wants, and especially since he's in control, because he's a real tough guy, not like weak ass Joe Biden. This is what they think. And so, this is extremely dangerous, and getting the American people riled up into that state of mind is extremely dangerous. It's going to be dangerous for the American people more than anybody else, because you can't do this anymore. You're not going to win any important battles doing this. You're going to end up losing massively. I mean, they're in this fight with China, which is, you can't win it. You just can't win it. And they can't acknowledge the fact that they're not ruling the world anymore, either militarily or economically. And that's what I think we're seeing from this discourse of Trump's is, again, the John Bolton asked, that's what we can intimidate everybody and take control of anything that we want. And Musk is part of that too.
So what do you, in my trying to connect these dots, am I right to do so? And again, some of this is silly talk. Renaming the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America. This is silly talk, but the impact that how this resonates to the ears of Xi Jinping, to the ears of Nicolas Maduro, to the ears of Khomeini in Iran, as they find themselves threatened by the United States. This, to me, isn't doing anything to calm fear, to calm tension, to lessen conflict. It is exacerbating the situation. Your thoughts? Yeah,
and that's one of the things people thought, and I think it probably is the case in some sense, that Donald Trump doesn't want to go to war. Okay, that people thought that means that Donald Trump is going to have respectful and peaceful relations with you. No, it doesn't mean that. Donald Trump's saying to himself, we don't want to go to war, and we won't go to war if we just threaten everybody, because we're the big guys, we're the tough guys, and if we show how strong we are, nobody will dare challenge us, and then we won't have to go to war. That's what Donald Trump thinks, and that's what look. For 30 years after the demise of the Soviet Union, that was more or less true. This is the fact. The United States, they didn't care what Russia did. Russia can think anything it wants. China can think anything they want. What can they do? Nobody can stop us. And to a certain extent, to a large extent, that was true. But it's not true anymore. You can't be partying like it's 1999 anymore. It's not. And they don't get that yet. And it's very, very dangerous. And this is an attempt to ward it off to a certain extent, because some level they know it, and they're doing this to kind of convince themselves that they're still in control. But as you say, the rest of the world is out there, and people like Putin and Xi and Lavrov. I mean, these are statesmen. This is nonsense, and they know the power they have and the power they don't have. They know it's dangerous. They're the ones who are rational. The problem is they're the ones who are rational, so they try to avoid wars, and they're faced with this partner, which they call, but the rival, who's out there threatening and arming and bombing all the time. So it's very, very difficult, and this is where someone like Trump or any American, but Trump is going to get himself in a position with Russia very soon, where he's going to have to decide whether he's going to watch Russia win, period, a victory that cannot be disguised. Or he's going to try and actually do something, not just in talk, not just bluffing, not just intimidating, but actually do something to go to turn the low-level war against Russia that we're in now into a full-on war against Russia. And I'm not sure at all what he's going to do, and I don't think he's sure what he's going to do. I don't think anybody's sure what he's going to do. But this kind of talk doesn't make me feel happy at all.
You talking about statesmen, talking about Lavrov and Xi Jinping, and it made me think of a quick story. When I was a kid, I've been playing tennis since I was 9. And when I was about 14, 15, I had a big serve. I was a serve and volley guy. And I'm playing a family friend, Dr. Pitts, who at the time was probably in his 60s. And so I'm thinking I'm the young strapping buck. I come on the court thinking I can just bomb Dr. Pitts off the court. And he's just dinking me. Dink, dink, dink. And I'm putting everything into it. I'm sending bombs. Dink, dink. And I'm just watching the ball go past me. Man, Dr. Pitts kicked my ass 2-4. He was the statesman. Yeah. He understood the long game. Power, he understood the angles of the court. He understood the game. Donald Trump doesn't understand the game. Jim Kavanagh.
Yeah, I know. And few American leaders now understand the state of play at the moment. They think the game is the game they were playing in 1999, 2005, 2003, etc. And they don't quite know how to play this game they're in right now. And it's extremely dangerous for everybody. And I don't know where it's going, but I'm not sanguine about it. I think it's likely to be a very bad outcomes coming pretty quickly. And he's going to have to decide what to do about Iran, because the Israelis have been for 15 years. And Donald Trump set up a war room in the CIA against Iran. And Netanyahu said that was more important to him than Donald Trump recognizing Jerusalem as the capital during Trump's first presidency. Mm-hmm. But then again, this was the classic example. Donald Trump ordered a strike on Iran and called it off with 10 minutes to go. So he assassinated Khomeini, which was an act of war, Soleimani, and along with an Iraqi general who was our ally, he killed both of them. It was an act of war, and they were on a peace. Soleimani was on a peace parlay mission with Mohandes, I think was the name of the guy.
Yes,
that was sanctioned by Trump, and he killed him. And then when the Iranians downed a drone, a Reaper, expensive drone, and Pompeo and Bolton wanted to go, and Lindsey Graham wanted to go attack Iran, he ordered an attack on Iran, but then he called it off with 10 minutes to go. And if you read the coverage of it, they said he talked. He watched Tucker Carlson on TV, talked against it, and he was talking to his generals, because the generals know this is dangerous.
Right.
So, but this is classic Trump. He both orders it and calls it off. And someday he's going to just order it. The next time he orders it, he's not going to call it off.
Or it's going to be too late for him to call it off.
It's because the Israelis will be out. They'll be gone. And once the Israelis are out, the Americans are never going to back off. They're going to follow the Israelis. Where if the Israelis and the Americans agree to an attack, there's going to be an attack, because the Israelis won't let them back off on it. And they want this. And they think now, after Syria, after everything that's happened, why don't we go now and get Iran? Israel wants to get Iran, to set Iran back 10 or 20 years. That's what they want to do. They can't invade Iran with troops. They know that, but they can bomb the crap out of them, and Israel will bomb them with nuclear weapons, and to set them back 10 or 20 years. So that's on Israel's agenda, and Israel's gotten everything it wants from the United States, and it is likely to get that. Trump is not. What did he say? They're going to bring hell to the Middle East, etc. So this is very dangerous. So, and these things are, much more important than his bloviating about the Gulf of Mexico.
And one point I wanted to make before we get out of here, and Jim, thank you so much, we were talking about the Resnicks owning 40% of the water in California, and that this, to a certain degree, is a fight over access to water. One of the things that doesn't get discussed in the conflict in historic Palestine is access to water. That is a huge issue in Gaza, in historic Palestine, is the settlers' access to water, and that doesn't get discussed.
Israelis are taking control of water supply in Syria, the dams and the major waters and the heights and the water supplies in Syria.
Dr. Jim Kavanagh, thank you so much for joining me today. Greatly, greatly appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Happy
Folks,
New Year.
Same to you, Jim. Folks, thank you all so much for listening to the Connecting the Dots podcast with me, Dr. Wilmer Leon. Stay tuned. New episodes every day. Please follow and subscribe. Leave a review. Share the show. Follow me on social media. You can find all the links below in the show description. Remember, this is where the analysis of politics, culture, and history converge, because talk without analysis is just chatter, and we don't chatter here on Connecting the Dots. See you all tomorrow. Until then, I am Dr. Wilmer Leon. Have a wonderful day. Peace. I'm out.
Connecting the Dots with Dr. Wilmer Leon, where the analysis of politics, culture, and history converge.